What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about how to get senior at software engineering and share some of the tips and strategies I've applied over the last few years to get senior. Now, this video should be useful for you if you're already motivated and you're wanting to figure out how to strategize and be deliberate about your career, and you also want to do it in the shortest amount of time possible. So, over the last couple of years, I've only worked about half of the time, often working for a year, then taking 6 months off, or working 6 months and taking another 6 months off. So I've proven to myself that it's possible to get good in an unconventional way, in a way where I'm still able to have a lot of free time and pursue personal interests. So if that sounds like something that's appealing to you, then hopefully this video has useful tips that you can apply to get there as well. The first tip I want to share is that when you're assessing different career opportunities, you want to assess them based on how much you can learn and how much skills you can develop from each opportunity, as opposed to how much an opportunity pays, how easy the job is, or how big the organization is. You want to directly assess how much am I going to be able to learn, or how much is my skill set going to grow if I take this opportunity, and focus that on the short term, because that's what's going to help in the long term, rather than something such as the pay, especially at the beginning of the career. I take a lot of inspiration from Cal Newport's career strategy, where the idea is to focus on the skills to build career capital. And once you have enough career capital, that's when you trade it for a job with the characteristics that are likely to yield career satisfaction, such as impact, creativity, control, mission. But the relevant and the right and the valuable skills are the foundation of that. That's why on our journey, we want to prioritize being in a context where we're able to develop our craft and develop the skills and grow. My second tip is to seek out mentors. A mentor is someone who is much further ahead of you in your journey, and they've gone through the experiences that you're going to go to, and they've learned a lot of the things, and they're able to share lessons that are going to be very valuable and help shorten your learning curve. So if possible, you want to choose a place with a lot of smart people, preferably who are very experienced and much further ahead in careers, who are willing to share knowledge and guide you along the way. One of the reasons why I'm saying much further ahead of you and older is because sometimes if people are the same age, they're basically walking side by side on you, they might be a bit more competitive or less willing to share knowledge. But I find that people who are at the end of their career, or they're much more developed in their career and they're really advanced, they often aren't that defensive, and they have the mindset where they're sharing knowledge out of goodwill. They can see things that you can't see from an objective perspective. They can keep you accountable. With mentors, we can unlock the hack of learning from other people's experiences rather than relying on our sole individual experience, right? So once you're on the job, find yourself in a situation where you're accountable for delivering results. Because when I find I'm accountable for delivering results, it forces you to learn things properly and to do things properly. And this is really important because it forces you to ensure that what you're delivering is complete and comprehensive. I'm contrasting this with a full-on junior example, because sometimes if people are really junior, not much is expected of them. Yes, they're allowed to learn, but if they stuff up, then someone else just comes in and saves them. And if they take too long, then someone else is just going to take their work, right? And then there's low expectations of you. So then you don't really have that positive pressure to get good, right? So if you can sign up for responsibility, gain the trust of others by delivering results, and you continue to deliver with high responsibility, then that's only going to accelerate your progress. I was in a situation where I was the only automation engineer. So it pretty much means you've got to do everything from scratch, and you've got to make sure everything goes right. And if you're stuck, then you really have to take ownership of solving the problems. And that's exactly the type of situation I'm talking about, where there's a kind of pressure which gets you good quick. You want to find situations where you're amongst pros, right? When you're amongst pros, you learn by immersion, and you see things, you observe how they do things, and you soak these good habits and practices in. I found situations where in pair programming, whether that be in person or whether it be on a Zoom call, you can see the way they think, you can see the way they approach problems, you can see their workflow. And I'm contrasting that with other situations I've been in where I'm purely the sole developer and I've been working on the project by myself for maybe 6 months or a year. And the ones where I'm working in a group of people, I find also the learning from immersion and soaking in the experiences of others and observing what they do well, what they don't well, that's extremely beneficial. So it might sound contradictory on the surface to the previous point where I was talking about getting all the accountability and the responsibility. But if you could get the best of both worlds or tick two boxes at once, one where your responsibility to deliver is high, but two where you still have access to not only the mentor that I talked about in the beginning, but also other professionals and seeing how they work and seeing how they do things, it's going to be extremely beneficial. Next tip is to get good at the art of learning itself. And so there's two types of learning I want to talk about. One type of learning mostly relates to theory. I think it's important to realize that there are effective ways to learn and ineffective ways to learn. And just because you feel like you're working hard or your method of learning is the way you've always learned or you're comfortable, it doesn't actually mean it's an effective way of learning. So you want to research and figure out how to learn effectively and efficiently, right? I've always done well when I was in high school and I've always gotten good marks, etc. But it was only till after university that I learned how to learn properly. And the way I was learning when I was young, a lot of it was just through brute force and through effort and through getting a head start, which is not necessarily efficient and effective. And it's not necessarily a sustainable strategy in the long run. I can definitely see in the workplace where it's often the case that people who are really good, they just happen to naturally learn very well. And sometimes they're hard workers, sometimes they're not. But then there's also a group of people who are hardworking, but they actually aren't very effective or efficient. And you don't really want to be in that boat. I would really recommend a course called I Can Study by Dr. Justin Sung, because after I did that, I feel like it really leveled up my learning and increased my confidence. But there's also the learning, which is the type of learning you get, which is hard to learn from a textbook, but it comes from learning on the job. It comes from being in the right environment and having the opportunity to go through different projects where it's like hard to learn purely by thinking and being theoretical, but it comes from contexts such as seeing how pros work, going through different projects, failing enough times to realize things, and sort of like getting your hands dirty. My advice is to put yourself in situations where you're going to be exposed to people who are really good, you're going to be in high pressure, and also you're able to fail in a controlled way. The benefit of failing often is you get the feedback and things become relevant, then you get scarred to an extent where things just stick and you have real experience to draw lessons from. The reason why I say you need to fail in a controlled way is you don't want to fail so big to an extent that you're not allowed to play the game, or you get too traumatized and scarred where you're not willing to walk back into the game. So just be careful about not taking it to the extreme, right? And my last tip for today is to get in the context where you're explaining things to people and you're mentoring and you're teaching things to people yourself. The reason why this is so good is because when we have to teach things to other people, one, we have to know our stuff. And often we think we know our stuff, but when we're forced to teach, then you actually have to know it more deeply and you actually got to get it properly. And also, you're approaching the topic from different angles, from the angle of a teacher or an explainer rather than a learner or someone who's just applying or implementing the knowledge. So it's another angle at which to approach knowledge, which draws more connections in the mind and actually makes you retain and have a deeper understanding of the field. Not only is it beneficial to the people that you're helping and you're teaching, but it's also beneficial to yourself. So if you can follow those strategies, I reckon you're well on your way to getting good quickly, and you're probably going to get better quicker than you think. And at least for me, that's a benefit because then I get more of my time back. So I hope that was useful. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you on the flip side.